So, Rich, one of the things that we talked about in the audio was the challenge that we have. Summer's here, there's a lot of fresh vegetables available to us, but really from a social standpoint, we're starting to get some invites to the graduation parties, maybe kids' picnics, maybe some of the ball games, and even though there's an abundance of fresh vegetables, the convenience usually comes to hot dogs, hamburgers, macaroni salad, and potato salad. I don't know about you, but those are my traditions.
The fruit salad with the little marshmallows in it.
Okay.
Just putting it there,
Yeah.
Fruit, yes. The little marshmallows, not so much.
Right. So when we're talking about how to battle, how to handle, how to overcome, however you perceive that when it comes to social circumstances, I really wanted to kind of share some really good tips with the viewers about how to appreciate being social without having it sabotage your health journey. What do you think your biggest obstacle is?
I like to not only take one. That's the problem I have, is that I can't have just one hot dog. I have to have four. I can't just have a little bit of something, so I refrain from it completely, just so it doesn't tempt me too much.
Well, that's wonderful, but why is that?
Just, I've always had a problem with, taking too much.
Is it that the abundance is available? And so I know, like, for my personal past history when I was large, and this is through no fault of my parents, but I remember my dad would always make us have our snack in a coffee filter. And I always felt like that was very limiting. And so what happened was, when my parents weren't home or when I got out on my own, because there was more than that coffee filter, I kind of ate an over amount. And it was kind of a mental thing. Do you think that there's anything that, again, is it the abundance? Is it the ability to have it that allows you? Because, 4 hot dogs is a lot of food. Don't you feel pretty stuffed after that?
I used to. Now I can eat even more. If, that's my issue, is that, the more I
Your belly
take,
is
the more I want.
Right.
But to answer your question, yes, I do, think that when I, moved out on my own, I was making my own food for the first time. It's like, well, I'm going to make it worth making something. And so I would make a larger portion.
Right.
And I don't want it to go to waste.
Well, and a lot of us, when we go out and we pay for a good meal, we see that too. Like, we want to have that abundance. There's a value tied to the investment, so I can appreciate that. So one of the things that I would say about that is, how mindful are you of that food going in? What does it actually taste like? Are you really chewing it? Does it taste good? A lot of times what happens is we get into these habits that are just comfort for us, that have, some consistency in our life. But when we peel it back and we actually become mindful in those actions, and we think about that hot dog, and we actually spend some time in our mouth with the hot dog, and we slow down, because there's about a 20-minute discrepancy between mouth and belly, right? So that's why I'm wondering, initially when you had 1 or 2 hot dogs, is it a scar fast eat kind of thing? Or is it, enjoy the conversation and take some time? So when it comes to social circumstances, if you find yourself taking too much, first of all, don't position yourself near the food.
No.
That's the first thing. Second of all, put yourself at a table where you're going to find yourself talking and doing other things. Don't go and get your food and then maybe go and take care of eating and then be social. Add social to it so you slow down. I'm not really always a big proponent of drinking while you're eating, because sometimes I feel that causes people to bloat and become ill. But how much have you drank is a big factor. So in all of my social events, I really don't care what people say. I come with my own measured water. And the reason for that is, most often in the summertime when we're out and about and we're doing things, we think because it's hot that we've had enough to drink, but we actually drink less in the summer than we do in the winter, because we're more distracted with all of the things to do.
sit down. I'm also very aware of portion size right now. I'm really buckling down on that. I can't tell you, I was driving home the other day, and I really wanted to stop for something on the way home. But the willpower kicked in, and didn't stop, got home, had a sensible meal, and that was it.
Well, and sometimes too, it's appreciating when, when Rich talks about having more full feeling, actually being dehydrated gives our body the desire to reach out for those carbs because it's looking for that hydration and it doesn't know the difference between whether or not it wants to eat or to drink. So you need to remember that your hydration status is a good essential thing. The other thing that I would like to say is sometimes we associate reward, right, and good feelings with food, not always negative. So sometimes when we get out into those social circumstances, we're feeling good about being there. We're feeling good about being in the company. And we've associated food to love sometimes. So an overabundance of food can be kind of tied to some of those emotions. And the way to figure that out is to actually sit back and pay attention to ourselves.
I find myself, in the past saying to myself, oh, I can do this now because I can work it off tomorrow, but then I never work it off. So, like I said, I just refrain.
Well, and on the other side, if refraining works for you, it doesn't work for me. I'm going to share a story with you. I started working with Dr. Christie here at the Empowerment Resource Center, and she told me that one of my food sensitivities was dairy. Now, let me share the story that 3 years ago, after eating healthy and my taste buds changing, my husband's a school teacher, and the minute he gets out of school, he wants to go to Dairy Queen and start getting blizzards. And I was at Dairy Queen 3 years ago, and I took a bite. And that mindful experience that I talked about led me to realize that I really didn't like the taste that was in my mouth. And then I started thinking about the work that I would have to do for that taste that was in my mouth. And about the third bite in, I said to myself, gosh, this really isn't worth it. And I gave the Dairy Queen Blizzard, by the way, Georgia Mud Fudge, it was my favorite, back to my husband. And I really, in the last 3 years, have had almost no ice cream. Dr. Christie said to me, you cannot have dairy. Ask me how many times I went to Dairy Queen in the Straw Hat in the week after. More times than I've probably been there in the last 3 years. So you have to be very careful with restraint. If that works, awesome. Unless you restrain, and then overcompensate for what you've not had for weeks. So you have to be, that's a very careful kind of road. It's better if you're that person like me to give yourself a little bit of that ice cream and have that mindful experience. What is it that I like about it? How does it taste? And process it than to stay away from it. So paying attention to yourself, figure out whether or not restraint actually works or it just leads you to bounce back to more weight later.
So, if your weakness is potato salad, getting back to social situations, then, don't take half a plate. Take a spoonful.
Yes, and actually what you should do is you should always graze fresh first. If it's somebody that you know doesn't typically have fresh, bring your own. Whether or not they've asked you, it's always nice to be generous, right, and kind. So graze fresh first. Get the fruit, get the fresh cut veggies. Maybe bring your own packed snacks if you're uncomfortable with bringing a dish to share, or eat at home first. Then go back for the things that are most delectable to you. So just remember, you can have potato salad anytime you want. They're like Christmas cookies, people. They're not associated to a holiday. They're not only made by Aunt May. They can be made by you anytime you want. So the mentality that you're never going to get that particular food in another circumstance drives you to eat way more than necessary. Have a little bit. And by a little bit, a half of a spoonful to a spoonful. If I know that I like that, I'm generally going to do a half a spoonful. I'm going to eat the rest of the fresh veggies. And I'm probably going to have one hot dog or one hamburger. I'm going to make sure that I watch what I put on it, and I'm going to add veggies to it. And then if I want more in 20 minutes, I'm going to go get more. But I'm not going to get 4 spoonfuls more. I'm going to get 1.
is a vegetable, but what can you put on it? What can't you put on it?
Well, Chef Billy and I, first of all, love butter, and we think that butter is a good, healthy fat, and in good quantity, it's not bad for you. Persons with diverticulitis or some bowel issues probably should really avoid corn on the cob. And I'm not a big fan of over-salting it if you're still eating a lot of processed foods at home, and here's why. It's interesting. A client just came to me, and when you come to me, we do a complete food journal. And in that day, we talked about her food journal. And the Olive Garden breadstick has 400 milligrams of sodium in it. So think about that. We're supposed to get 2,300 milligrams a day, right? And the one breadstick, which by the way, she had two. So the one snack serving had 800 milligrams of sodium to it.
Danger, Will Robinson.
Yes. So salt has gotten a bad name just as sugar's gotten a bad name. But the reason for that is because a lot of the processed foods that we're taking in today's life and the convenience foods are loaded with salt. So I prefer to pick up some of the other seasonings that you might see on the side that don't contain salt, or make my own, or sometimes simply having a really good piece of corn with butter is enough.
Awesome. And there are instances where somebody will overindulge. It's not the end of the world. You just have to make sure to be smart from there on out.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we have to recognize is that we think, oh, I overdid it. I had all those potato salads. I had 2 or 4 hot dogs, and so now it's willy-nilly. I can eat anything that I want. But I tell people all of the time, 80-20 is a great rule. On my calendar for the next 4 weeks, there's a graduation party every weekend, right? So looking at that every weekend over the course of 4 weeks, knowing that I'm eating out somewhere that I can't control, I'm going to be really mindful for the week. I'm not going to blow it out the door for 2 or 3 days. I'm going to really let myself have that day. I don't call them guilt-free days, but knowing that that day is coming, I'm going to be very interested in making sure that I have fresh veggies to grab in my refrigerator, that I'm going to eat enough food through the week so I don't overindulge just simply out of hunger. And I'm going to make sure that I'm well hydrated so that my choices can be whatever they are. One does not make a difference. One holiday doesn't make a difference. One picnic doesn't make a difference. One bad meal doesn't make a difference. It's the consistency of choices that does.
All about planning ahead.
Absolutely, and we're going to talk about that in our next video segment.
Thanks so very much for joining us.